Good evening, class. Today we'll be learning about unipolarity, bipolarity, and multipolarity. Like what all, how polarized the world was, and at what in certain point of time, whether is it bipolar or unipolar or multipolar, depending upon the power structure that existed in the world. So we will be reading it like you can also understand how the world was during the world wars, after the world wars, and during the Cold War and after the Cold War and the later 2000 period, how the world has changed, how the power structure in the world has changed. That we'll be reading it today. So first, let us understand polarity. Polarity is nothing but distribution of power, like how power has distributed in the globe. Like distribution of power is nothing but whether it is distributed or whether it is there in hands of one country or two country or more than two countries. So that's how you might have read during the Cold War, the two blocks, USA and USSR. Like, then the power was installed in the hands of two. So this polarity defines who is superpower, who is greater power, and based on this global balance that these two powers or three powers will try to imply or control the world. So for Kenneth Walls, the great power shapes security dynamics and the way they act. He says that then international politics is described in terms of anarchy and polarity. So Kenneth Walsh, you might have known, he is a neorealist. So his structural realism, he especially explains that the the lack of international authority or the central authority, the state structures are as such. There is no ego factor or anything like that. Due to the state structures, they have been acting like that. So international politics is described in terms of anarchy and polarity by Kenneth Walls. Then let us understand what is bipolarity and what all period that the countries we have seen during the bipolar world. So it is power distribution between two states with majority of economic and military and cultural influence within them. So this bipolarity is seen between USA and USSR. And Morgenthau also says that bipolar system, the states are at constant race for superpowers, and they maintaining this dynamic equilibrium where one country achieves to take over the power and other country tries to balance it. So they always try to maintain this balance equilibrium, and it started with the end of World War II. Then the power transition disrupted this balance where the USA had this dominance for a brief period, and later on, USSR with its nuclear declared as a nuclear power state, again it was installed to bipolarity. And USSR had offered ideological support, whereas USA, the victor as human material war, was very low. Then, until 1949, it was leading the military, trade, industries, production, and it was only nuclear power. And after 1947, as Europe was divided into two blocks, there was a Europe had acted as a bone of contention between these two superpowers. Who are these two superpowers? USA and USSR. So it was first Cold War, that first event which we called as blockade of Berlin. This had started with the blockade of Berlin 45. Then 1949, Soviet had tested its first atomic bomb, and the Iron Curtain, which was it was coined by Winston Churchill. So this has divided Europe into two blocks, and Americans were initially concerned with the communist expansion, and um, Stalin had been accused of breaching this Yalta Agreement. And the USSR also, it felt that it was surrounded by the imperialist expansion. Then, with World War II, the powers like France, Britain, Italy, Germany, they've lost their power and authority, and they've been having this proxy wars to maintain hostility through the client states. Now, the superpowers show their strategic and ideological goals, basically in the terms of nuclear power. And for Carl Deuce, two superpowers fighting war on a third country's soil. So this proxy wars are nothing but the two superpowers of the Cold War era is nothing but the superpowers were fighting the war on a third country of soil, and this could be seen in terms of Korean War 50, 53, then Vietnam 59, something 60s, then Afghan War 70s. So all these. years. This proxy was like Korea 1950 and 53, Berlin 58, 62, Congo early 60. Could be noticed as a proxy war where this war was not going on these two countries. So the land was away, their power was away from a third territory that they've been fighting on. So polarity does not always mean there's a balance, but it always creates a balance of terror. Okay, so and proxy wars have become prevalent, especially after nuclear power status. So this also due to the fear of potential exchange of this nuclear arms or nuclear bombing. Then there are certain advantages of bipolarity. What happens in this is weaker states participate together rather than taking sides of this superpower. So this led to the emergence of non-aligned movement. So non-aligned movement is the third block, which is rather not a neutral block, but an answer to though all those countries who have not joined these two blocks. So, but also in bipolarity, there is less tension of war than multipolarity because in case of imbalance, the two powers can try bringing up the balance, and it do not complicate things of uncertainty and bandwagoning and fear of allied defection. So, but there are certain disadvantages to this bipolarity. This is because of the alliances or bandwagoning have been divided between the East and the West blocks. So this can be seen in terms of NATO of 1949, UNSUS 1951. Basically, this was between America, Australia, and New Zealand, and the trilateral agreement. Then Seattle 1956 defense treaty with China 1954, where the blocks were kind of divided among themselves. So they've been trying to get their other partner member countries to support them. Then the smaller states are compelled to join either one of the alliance to show their allegiance. So in a way, you don't have an alternative, but rather to, uh, support these powers. So in verge of maintaining equilibrium, the powers are at constant war-like situations, and this was used as a medium by many smaller states in making alliances with the superpower. So this is how the bipolar world was, although they say that it was trying to create the balance. But in the way of creating this equilibrium, these two powers were at constant race among themselves. Now let us talk about unipolarity. So unipolarity is nothing but the distinguished from hegemony and empire. It is basically the distribution where power distribution where only one country exercises the power. So as per Kenneth Walls evaluating theories, he says that unipolarity leads to little uncertainty. So Kenneth Walsh is not a big fan of unipolarity. He's a supporter of bipolarity. In his neo-realist or structuralist theories, he has said that the bipolarity is what brings up the balance in the world, and the state is at advantage, but no hegemonic rivalry from other states in international sphere, and also it reduces the scope of balance of power as it has only one state and there is only unipolar power distribution and less disagreement between the leadership. And US unipolarity created a society for third world. So there are certain three characteristics where of this unipolarity. First one is unipolarity is similar to empire system, where there is only one authority or one kingdom that would have control over the other nation states. And it is constrained by anarchy, where it is difficult to control regime and foreign policies of the other states. So it is also similarly like hegemony system, and the features are low competition among nations. Second-tier states also can also form an alliance with the power, and they can come into power. And USA unipolarity has created global society, which kind of try to mitigate the physical security threats in a way of promoting human security. And the dominance of US had during the dominance while the collapse of Soviet Union, where it led to USA being the dominant power. And it could also be seen in terms of economy, military, and industry. Then global America has led to democratization and spread of American values institutions on a global scale. USA and Europe, on the other hand, and new rising powers like China, India, Russia, Latin America are on the other hand. So they have become an era of how to deal with USA. Now, Beijing Moscow strategic partnership, European troika of Russia, Germany, France did not commit any of the risks of confrontation with the USA. So from 1940 to 2000, the monetary policy was mostly uh, dominated by the objectives and values of USA because these organizations were kind of funded and maintained by the USA itself. So unipolarity has led to intervention in the third world nations. So this gave them the green card to intervene in the policies, in the structural policies, economic policies of these third world countries because there was no other power to object their intervention. Then let us talk about multipolarity. So multipolarity is more than two. So more than two means three. If it's two, it's bipolarity, right? So more than two, if there are three, four, multiple numbers, it is called as multipolarity. So it is also similar to military, cultural, and economic influence. So it is also more complicated than bipolarity because it here there is in bipolarity the power equilibrium would be has to be balanced between two blocks, but rather in multipolarity there are many power centers, so it is rather difficult to balance this. So you will also have no rigid friends or no rigid enemies. You will only have short-term alliances and realliances. And multipolarity is nothing but in this globalized world with the new powers coming into the picture, the polarity keeps shifting. And also, it is hard to achieve their cooperation among themselves because there are multiple countries. You have to make them agree upon certain points. Also, it is also difficult. They are not even if you look at the parliament, it is very difficult to make the multiple uh, leaders of the nations states to agree upon certain points. So imagine dealing it on a larger scale where the states have to agree to such things. And also, it encourages diverse interests, doesn't necessarily mean conflict. So, as per Stephen Wasboy, multipolar system includes the majority states, typically at least five of roughly equal power and capabilities. And also features of this multipolarity. It has led to regional interdependence due to process of globalization and also the technological advancement and economic prospects. Then it also led to higher dividend on policy cooperation among sovereign states in comparison to the unipolar states, where here the power has been distributed among multiple actors. And also, it is defined by the three factors such as diversity of actors, changing pattern of global rules and norms, commonality of interests, and also the cooperation is done through power and the multi-structure. And the power in international politics will vary with the decision-making ability, and it does not incent states to share power and forces them to compete. So rather, it increases the competition among the states than the incentives building. So decline of USA as an unipolar power. So what happened? It is due to emergence of new multiple states. This has led to unproductive military adventures in Iraq, Afghanistan, and economic recession, which had led to it as an byproduct. And in 2011, market crisis, and with the rise of China, Russia, and Brazil, also USA has lost its dominance. But losing of its dominance doesn't mean it has ended, but rather the multipolarity existed, so the power has been divided among various states. So this has brought up to a concept of bargaining aspects among the states has decreased. UNO role has increased. There have been diverse opportunities to have opened with the states, and multiple interactions have increased among the states. So these are all possible advantages of the multipolarity. Now, the disadvantages would be instability because there are many powers, and nuclear power created a source of instability, which nuclear, with countries coming into the nuclear notion, and terrorism creates more havoc with increase in nuclear power, and stability of world depends on unpredictable events, increase in influence of non-state actors, then middle powers, small powers and non-state actors with nuclear capabilities have become serious threat to the global security because as there was multiple power structures, these are very difficult to control. So now we'll add on another lecture in this. So I'll be sharing that now. So we'll also be reading about uh, power, national power, balance of power, and collective security. These are all very small topics. So that's why I've crushed them into a single chapter. So the power concept of power has been given by the Morgenthau. So Morgenthau, if there's any notion of power comes, then there exists Morgenthau. He sees power as a psychological tension between those two, and power is control of mind, action, and persons. And some of the definitions would be like relationships among political units and such as parties, government, international organizations, and also they possess power which can make them to do anything. So this is how the power has been introduced over a period, and the power is an instrument primarily used for achieving state goals. It could include prestige, it could include territory, security, and to achieve ends, the state can use techniques varies from various ranges. So, as power, it is divided into types of powers. This concept has been given by Joseph Nye. Joseph Nye gives two types of powers. First one is soft power, second one is hard power. So hard power is nothing but military, economic stability, geography, natural resources, and size of the population. So it is basically a commanding power. It will show the world that you are at the strength. Okay, so it will show the readiness of your nation. Then soft power is nothing but cultural, political values and policy institutions. So soft power is through extension of these culture, economic prospects in the purview of like suppose we India has been using this yoga as its soft culture, soft power to build its relationships in the Latin American country. So that's how it is done. So that's why hard power, soft power, the concept is given by Joseph Nye. Then comes the concept of national power. So, what is national power? Nations use this power to secure the interests in international relations, and also it is their ability to control, influence, or change the behavior of the states. So, national power is basically nothing but to secure their national interests and it to combine their capabilities. Two types of capabilities are there, tangible and intangible. So this can also be seen as natural factors, socio-economic factors, and psychological factors. Now, let us talk about some of the elements of national power. So, these elements are described as the stable and unstable elements by Morgenthau. Lurch Ace describes this as tangible and intangible. Organsky says them as natural and social determinants. Farmer and Perkins give seven elements of national power. So this is seen in terms of natural elements, scientific and technological elements, political elements, social ideological elements, external and other elements. This is how the national determinants of national power could be understood. Now let us understand what is balance of power. Balance of power is very important concept. Balance of power and collective security is very important concepts. These two are very important concepts in international relations. So balance of power comes first, later preceded by collective security. So balance of power is said to have existed in 15th and 19th century. So it limits the excessive power of a nation like how because the excessive power gained by one country would be balanced would be tried to balance by another country or a group of countries coming together to balance that excessive power that has been accumulated by that member country. So this can also be seen through Kautilya's mandalas theory. He explains that how states must maintain its power through friends, foes, and keep everything in balance. So this can also be seen during Peloponnesian War, 1431, 40, no, 4, where rise of Athens led to collapse of city-states. Like rise of Athens unanimously, it has become most powerful and it led to the collapse of this city-states. And there are two ways of balance of power. First one is by increasing your own power and building arms, expansion of territory, and increase in with the help of other countries through policy. Then let us understand the characteristics of balance of power. So this system maintains equilibrium and it is temporary, it is unstable and safeguard policy in multi-state system. It also does active intervention of states through alliances and counter alliances. It also favors status quo. So this is all in all the characteristics of balance of power. So if these characteristics could also be asked in multiple choice questions if you are attempting any. And this multiple choice questions basically addresses that how do you describe this balance of power and what are its characters? What are its characteristics in purview with dealing with the member nations? And there are different types of balance of power. First one is simple balance. In the simple balance, it's in the name itself. This is nothing but only two powers exist. So in two powers exist means what comes? Bipolarity comes into picture. So in this USA and USSR or the post-World War, where these two countries have dominated the power structure in the world. Then the other ones is balance, multiple balance, where there exists group of states. So this is basically multipolarity in which the complex interdependence and the complex balance this keeps changing multiple times. So multiple times they'll be following alliances, realliances, because it's a multipolar and there are different power stations. So in order to balance everything depending on the time, they keep changing their positions. Then another one is local, regional, and global balance. This is based on geography, where the local India, Pakistan, Europe, regional means Europe and Asia, global means network of alliances. So, like local structure, regional structure, and the global structure of balance. So, this is basically the cosmopolitan structure where it starts with your neighbors, it starts with the different nodes, different modes of alliances, and different modes of uh, power structure. So the next one is flexible and rigid. So flexible and rigid is nothing but the rules uh, are flexible with, and some of the things are like rigid ideology. So this rigid ideology means their culture would be very rigid. So if there is rigidity means if there's a notion of shifting the positions like really hard, you have to work on to shift the positions. Then this period, this balance could be stayed for longer time. So if there is any rigid structure, then the balance could be maintained for more time. Then some of the alliances or the military pacts that have been formed in order to maintain this balance of power is NATO and Warsaw. So NATO by America and Warsaw Pact by USSR, they've been developed as a military alliances to balance each other military expansion. Then BOP before World Wars. So in 17th century, the Habsburg dynasty rules Austria and Spain threatened to dominate Europe. So it was earlier during 17th century, this was the balance of power structure that existed in the world. Then 30 years war during 1618 and 1648, the Sweden, England, France, Netherlands defeated Habsburg. Later in 19th century, the Europe coalition began, where Britain, Russia, Austria, Prussia against Napoleon in the Battle of Waterloo in 1815. So here, if you look at every balance of power states, then a balance of power timeline, the Britain has always played a balancer role. So it was Britain who was balancing the both powers on and trying to control the power polarity by being a by being a balancer state. Then let us understand what is collective security. So collective security is nothing but it's a mechanism in order to preserve peace. So this is also based on uh, a principle of aggression by a nation against any one nation against all. So this is basically one for all and all for free. It's like if one there is one aggressive nation, then that aggressive nation could be balanced or could be controlled by all the other nations coming together and fighting it. Okay, so it's one for all, one for everybody, and all for free. Then attack on, let's suppose being in collective security, if one state attacks the other states, then that can be considered as an attack on all the states. That's why they'll come together and fight against this attacker state. Then collective security is nothing but a method to achieve goals of security. So it tries to prevent attacks or threat by aggressor states where rest of the world will be unified. So basically, what happens in order to control, suppose any two countries have been fighting and one is a violator to any treaty or one is a violator to any pact, then then rest of the member countries will think that it is an attack on every one of us. So it is our duty to control this rogue state. So in order to stop its expansion or in order to stop it from attacking us also in future. So this is how they go by this principle of one for all and all for free, or aggression against one nation is aggression against all the nations. So in a purview of that, all the nations will be unitedly fighting for that single cause. Then origin, it could be traced back to 1902 by Roosevelt during the period of Roosevelt, where it's incumbent on all civilized and orderly powers to insist a proper policy of the world. And later it can be seen in 1910, where Wallenhoven has said that there's a need for international enforcement mechanism in order to control the war among the nations. So let us understand some of the characteristics of this uh, collective security. So it is to prevent international peace through crisis management, and it also to eliminate war among nations, which are bound to happen, but you cannot eliminate that. So this follows a principle that you cannot simply eliminate a war, but you can rather balance that power diffusion when the war has been instigated. So, and also war among nations are bound to happen, cannot be eliminated, and to take necessary steps to avoid the violation of peace. Then it regards aggression or war as enemy state, not the state may resort to where aggression. Then it is limited to elimination of war, aggression, and the threat. So these are all basic characteristics of collective security that you have to remember. Then there are certain preconditions which could be defined what is aggression. So aggression is nothing but it is essential feature of collective security. So it needs more powerful and effective institutions. So it has to be engaging and more powerful role has to be played by United Nations Security Council, and the formation of permanent international peacekeeping forces, then peaceful forms of conflict resolution and sustainable economic development has been there preconditions to be known. Then collective security and balance of power. You should know the differences. So this is an important theory answer. So first one is balance of powers exists, competitive alliances, whereas collective security is universal cooperation for collective security. Then in terms of balance of power, policies of major powers plays a key role, whereas in collective security, it needs commitment of all nations of the world. Then balance of power, only a few in agreement, which are in agreement are involved. But whereas in collective security, all the nations collectively fight against an aggression state. Then in balance of power, interests are common with only few states in CS. general agreement, there exists a general agreement among all the states. So this is how you can understand the notion of collective security, balance of power, then power structure, then unipolarity, multipolarity, and bipolarity. So in this class, I have combined around like 6 or 7 units, seven topics, where it is very important for multiple choice questions. It is also important for MCQ. It is also very important if you are trying to write a theory answer. So the balance of power is an important. They might ask you the differences between balance of power and collective security. Then you can give up, explain answer based on that slide. Then they may ask you what is unipolarity, what is bipolarity, what is multipolarity, like different separate different answers, or what all how the world was polarized and how the power was divided. Then also you can write one big answer. Then they might ask you what is BOP. BOP is nothing but balance of power. Or they may ask you also to explain what is uh, collective security, and they might also ask you the different types of power and what is the concept of power, and explain various determinants of national power. So then you have to explain definition of power, what is it meant by power, and various types of powers as given by Joseph Nye: hard power, soft power. And there's also strategic power by Susan Strange, but it is not important for your thing. But if you may write, it's well and good. Then also they'll ask you the determinants of national power. So what are the features that could play a role in determining a country's national power? Then how also you can add combine it with how the polarity, the bipolarity world was, like the Kenneth Waltz proposition of that bipolar world um, is a stable world, and how you can debate it, how you can agree with it. And you can also write the evolution from bipolar to unipolar to then bipolar to unipolar to multipolarity, like how the world structure has changed over a period, and how it had helped led to the arms race and the accumulation of arms and increasing the threat among the member states. So these are all you can write from this lecture, like the what is power, balance of power, national security. And in the beginning of the class, I have said about unipolarity, bipolarity, and multipolarity. So all these things, like around 5 or 6 topics are there, individual topics. So do read 5 or 6 individual topics separately and also in combination with each other. So I hope you are all clear with this today's lecture. And so if so clear, then I may resume the class. So with the next class, we'll talk about nuclear, the disarmament, arms race, and the nuclear proliferations, all the treaties that have went during the disarmament, nuclear disarmaments, and the arms race. So that is also very interesting chapter to learn by. It will also have various treaties which are very important for MCQ point of view or any exam that you are attending. So see you all in next class.